Sorry, I'm just moving you to this gender. Okay. There we go.
Okay. So, I assume most of you have heard me before. Some of the faces are familiar, if not all of them. But those of you who did not, as you're aware, I am Mrs. Federgrun's father. But that has no bearing on anything I'm going to say today. This Parsha, Chayei, repeats the episode of Eliezer and Rivka twice. Right? Once it tells us the episode itself, and the other time it tells us what Eliezer told Lavan and Besuel. And Chazal are bothered by this, and they say there are many, many different parashos in the Torah which have the basic halachas of Judaism. Shabbos, and as the salient, the primary example, where most of it is not written in the Torah itself. Their 39 malachas are all halacha Moshe Sinai. They're not written in the Torah. Perhaps Havara is written in the Torah, perhaps Otzah, but the other malachos are not written in the Torah at all. And there are many halachas like that where we know the halachas primarily from Torah Shebal Peh, or we have to derive them on our own from the Yugim Midos Shator Nidresh plan, which Chazal used to determine halachas. So the Chazal say, why is that? So the answer they give is Yafeh Sichasan shel Avdei Avos Yosem mitarasim shel banim. More beautiful is the discourse of the servants of the fathers more than the Torah, which is of the children. Now, before I get into that, I want to give another, not going against Chazal, Chas v'Shalom, but another answer to the question of why most of halachos are written beremez, written with a hint, while we spend so much time on the Musar part of the Torah. Because the Torah was primarily meant to be Torah Shebal Peh. The Gemara says that I didn't want to write most of my Torah because then everyone would have access to it. Because Torah is meant to be Baal Peh, so Am Yisrael could have it uniquely and develop it uniquely on their own. Everybody else was to have the written code. The Torah Shebal was universal, but Torah Shebal Peh was supposed to be the unique domain of Am Yisrael. So therefore, halachas were given primarily Baal Peh in order that we should have that Torah Shebal Peh, which is primary to us. And again, as I said, Torah Shebal it's unique unto us as opposed to Torah Shebal. But the Chazal are saying that the reason they're giving is Yafeh Sichasan shel Avdei Avos. And this leads us to a very fundamental gra. There's a gra which says that in Mishlei, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Yudalad, if I recall correctly, Perek Dal, Pasuk Gimel, it says that the Ikikar Masha Adam Chai, the primary reason why a person is alive, Hu Lishbor Hamita Shelo Shavar Ad Ata, is to break the midah that he hasn't broken till now. The Tzarich Lischazek, and a person has to fortify themselves. V'im Lav, and if he doesn't fortify himself, do that. Lama Lo Chaim, why should he be alive? So this is the Vilna Gaon. You would think that the Vilna Gaon, the Gra, if he would choose for us something for us to focus on, that thing we would choose us to focus on would be learning Torah, right? That was a litvak, a misnagid, and that is the ultimate purpose for, we would think. But he does not. He says that the primary purpose in which a person is alive is to break their negative character traits. And there's a very, very famous, very important principle from Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital asks, why does it not say in the Torah to have good midos? It never says in the Torah, don't get angry. You would think, Chazal tells that, at least going to the Rambam's version, everybody gets angry, it's as if they're worshiping Avodah Zarah. So you would think that the Torah itself would tell us, don't get angry. Yet the Torah never says anything of the sort. Why does the Torah never tell us that? So Chaim Vital says because you have the principle of derech eretz kadmol Torah, that you can't even come to Torah before you have derech eretz. Derech eretz is the basis, at least that you're working on it. Therefore, you know that Chazal tells in Pirkei Avos, Kol shiroso chachmaso kodemes to chachmaso miskayemes. Any person whose wisdom, their Yiras Hashem precedes their wisdom is sustained, and not vice versa. In other words, you have to have, before you come to learn Torah and to involve yourself in Torah mitzvahs, you have to have yira. Yira is a perspective. Yira comes from the word, is related to the word re'iyah, spelled this is with the same letters. Where you have to have something, a goal on which you are focused, and then you learn Torah in the context, in the framework of that goal which you have. So the goal which we have which we have to work on even before we get to Torah, is our character traits, our midos. And this is a very, very difficult thing to do because, as Rabbi Saul Solanter said, it's easier to learn all of Shas than it is to change one midah. Have you ever heard that before? Anybody heard that before? No? Well, let me tell you something. I'm on my 7th time around Shas, and it's easier to learn Shas 7 times than it is to change one midah. Changing one's midos is a very, very hard thing to do, because one's character is set very early on, and it's very, very difficult to change. And there are many influences which go into our character, which are beyond our capacity, at first at least, it seems, to change. Rather to influence, which are, of course, where we're born, who our parents are, so on and so forth. But that's the reason why we're alive, to change the midos which we have, which are negative, and to develop the ones which are positive. Everything goes into that framework. So therefore, in Sefer Bereshis, obviously, therefore, is the first Sefer in the Torah, because it's telling us what our purpose in this world is, right? We have to know that we're here in order to achieve the midos of the avos. And that's why Chazal say, person Chayei Adam Lomar, Mosei Agiu Masei Avosai, Avram, Yitzchak, V'Yakov. I imagine for women it could be, you can substitute Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. But in any event, the idea is that we have to try to get to the Maisim, to the level of the deeds of Avram Avinu. Now, the interesting is, first of all, it doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu. And it doesn't say Chochmah. It says Maisa. Right? So what we're saying here is we're not asking you to be smart like Moshe Rabbeinu. That's not what you're supposed to strive for. And you're not supposed to say, Masai Yagia Chochmasi L'Chochmas Moshe Rabbeinu. But you're supposed to strive to fix your Maisa, to fix what you do. And how do you fix what you do? By actually doing deeds like Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who are not teaching us halacha, but teaching us hanhaga, how to conduct ourselves. Now, it's interesting. The Rambam says, what is the difference between Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and he throws in Moshe, and the rest of us? This is a very depressing Rambam I'm about to tell you, okay? If you're not depressed after you hear it, then you haven't listened. So the Rambam says that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Moshe are different than us in the following way. That they could deal with the secular world, with the mundane world, whether it was negotiating treaties, digging wells, or fighting wars, whatever they were doing, at the same time be fully focused in their minds on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They could multitask. They could function on 2 levels. So the Rambam is saying that this is what set the Avos and Moshe Rabbeinu apart. They were able to achieve dveikus internally, and I'm not sure if it's the Hasidic dveikus, where you're trying to connect directly to Hashem, or the Misnaglish dveikus, where you're thinking about Hashem. You know, there's a difference, right? Everyone knows the difference? Do you understand there's a difference? Okay, dveikus, I'm not sure, because you always, whether you actually mean that or not. But let me tell you then briefly, according to the Misnaglish, the Hasidic concept of dveikus has to do with me dialoguing and communicating with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, Hashem, whether Hashem answers me or not depends on my madrega, but it has to do with me interacting with Hashem. That is the Hasidic notion of dveikus. The Misnaglish notion of dveikus is that you think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you connect to the ideas which HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to connect. It's not as if you're talking, or davening is a good example, directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? It's interesting because once we're on the topic, this is a total digression, but once we're on the topic, Chabad is somewhere in the middle. Because Chabad, they hold the dveikus, but they hold the dveikus through Chochmah Bina Das. So therefore, the other Hasidim hold the dveikus through what the Chabad call Chagas, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, which is the emotional spheros, and Chabad holds Dveikus Shiv through Chabad, which are the intellectual spheros. So Chabad is somewhere in the middle between the Misnagdim and the other Hasidim. But in any event, whatever Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov were, whether they were other Hasidim, Chabad, or Misnagdim, we don't know. So they had this Dveikus internally at the same time that they were relating to other people. So the Rambam says, we can't do that. It's not. We're not able to do that to function on those two levels at once. But he says, so that's not the depressing part. The depressing part is the following. He says, but I have an eitzah for you. I have a suggestion for you. For 2 to 3 hours a day, you focus on your mundane matters. I think he says 2, maybe 3, but I think 2. He says, so 2 or 3 hours focus on your mundane and secular life. But of course, the rest of the time, you can focus totally on Kodesh Baruch Hu. What's the problem? Except for those 2 hours a day, the rest of the day, anybody can focus on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so that's the depressing part. Are you girls depressed? No? I tried. Okay, so I get, you know what, maybe Noshim Tzidkonios are able to think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu the entire day besides for those 2 hours. That must be it. So like you have your secular studies, and the rest of the day, everything is about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Probably okay. So getting back to our parsha. So Yafeh Sichasan shel Avdei Avos Yosem Mitarasim shel Banim means not just Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but it means Eliezer, the Eved Avram, was also someone from whom we have to learn. There obviously Eliezer. There's some sort of medrash, I don't remember where it is, that Eliezer was one of the people who went up to Shemaim. He didn't die. But whether we don't have to assume that Eliezer was holy for this purpose, we have to assume that Eliezer absorbed the midos of Avraham Avinu for this purpose, and that's why in the old parsha he's never identified as Eliezer. Did you ever notice that? Did you ever notice the Chayei saw that Eliezer is not called Eliezer? No. You girls go to shul? Okay, actually, do you learn Parsha? No. Okay. Well, in the entire Parsha, he's never called Eliezer. It's called always Eved Avraham. Why is it called Eved Avraham in the whole Parsha? Because his entire self was bound up in his status as Eved Avraham. Chazal say that Eved Melech Melechu, the slave of a king, picks up the traits of a king. So what Eliezer picked up from Avraham Avinu was the traits of Avraham Avinu and his character. So that's why Eliezer is the Parsha tells us twice over the story of Eliezer Eved Avraham without telling us his name, in order to tell us that if you have a great man, then people who connect to him, a great man or woman, people who connect to them who are open, absorb their traits, and they can be learned from as well. And we have in Gemara several cases. The most famous example is Tavi, the Eved of Rabbi Yehuda, who actually was considered to be a Talmid Chacham, because they absorbed the traits of their masters. And certainly this is true by any person who is a Talmid or a Talmidah of a Rebbe or a Morah, that you have one has to try and find in one's teachers things to emulate in terms not just of absorbing knowledge. That's insufficient. The truth is, you probably don't absorb that much knowledge from your teachers. But why is that? Because I'm just going off on a tangent here. I'm going to give you a little rant. Because most kids don't think. Now, why? I'm going to give you an example. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I teach 6th and 8th grade girls and boys, and I was trying to explain to them the difference between the Julian and the Gregorian calendar. Anybody there know that there's 2 calendars, the Julian and the Gregorian? Some people do. Okay, so the Julian calendar is behind the Gregorian calendar. So therefore, anything on the Julian calendar comes out later than it does on the Gregorian calendar. It used to be 11 days when Pope Gregory in the 16th century changed it, the calendar, from Julius Caesar's calendar to the new one. Now, according to the Gregorian calendar, every year which ends in a multiple of 100 is not a leap year, while according to Julian calendar, it is a leap year. So every century, there's one additional day of gap, which comes up. Now, we say the same Talmud Matar based on the Julian calendar. Because the halacha is you're supposed to start saying Saint Talmud Matar 60 days after the beginning of autumn. And 60 days, and we start saying the Saint Talmud Matar on December 5th. At the beginning of autumn is September 21st. At that point, I asked all these classes, what is 60 days after September 21st? And again, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but almost everybody, 90% of the kids, answered December 5th. Why did they answer December 5th? Because they're trained not to think. They're trained to look in what the teacher said for what the answer might be, and then regurgitate it at the teacher. So therefore, since all I said is December 5th, they immediately seized on to December 5th, and did not think further that actually 60 days after September 21st is what day? What day is 60 days after September 21st? $60. Yes, 2 months after September. After September 21st is what day?
November 21st?
Good. Very good. Okay. It's truly rocket science. But anyway, so that is why you might not learn that much information from your teachers, because you're not trained to. I didn't put you on the spot. I didn't test you. And perhaps you all would have gotten it right. But one is not trained to. We're not so trained to think. But we are capable of picking up emotions much more naturally and intuitively, especially women, than we are chachma, than we are wisdom and knowledge. So therefore, it's important to find a teacher, a role model, a person from whom one can learn not just Torah, but midos, and midos are more important. That's why a person always has to see Chazal say, a Rav hadoimeh lamalach Hashem tzvakos. A Rav who's like an angel. No rabbi is an angel. But what does it mean? It means somebody who has good midos, somebody who tries to strive to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and tries to strive to elevate and change their midos. If you don't have a person like that, so then the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch says that in our day and age, our Sfarim are our Rabbeim. So therefore, you have to find an excellent Musar Sefer, which talks to your heart. And different Musar Sfarim talk to different people's hearts in very different ways. And there are Misnagdisha Musar Sefer, there are Hasidisha Musar Sfarim, but they're also primarily and more importantly Sfarim which talk about Musar and nothing else. And those are good Sfarim to learn in order to accomplish one's purpose of developing one's midos. It's interesting. I don't know if you're aware. There's sometimes in classrooms you see Torah Masorah printed a poster with the 13 midos of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but they used to put them out in schools. So these 13 midos of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter come from a sefer. They're not his own. They come from a sefer called Cheshbon HaNefesh. Cheshbon HaNefesh is a sefer about how to work on one's midos. He talks about making charts and filling in the charts and working on a midah a week. And it's a very interesting sefer, which was endorsed and adopted by the Musar movement. But that the Cheshbon HaNefesh did not come up with this idea on his own. His ideas on his own. He actually got them from Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin had 13 character traits. You're in Canada. You know who Benjamin Franklin was? Any idea? No?
Yeah.
You do know what Benjamin Franklin was. Okay. So, because my screen is frozen, so for some reason I can't see if you're shaking or nodding your heads. But you can still see me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope at least you can hear me. So Benjamin Franklin came up with these character traits and said these are like thrift and humility, and the other ones which are, not go slow to anger, and so on and so forth. And he made a program for working on midos, for working on these character traits. And this idea of working on these traits is not that, it's not that Rabbi Solomon didn't know that they were taken from a non-Jewish source. Cheshman never says that, so his introduction, though it doesn't know Benjamin Franklin. But the idea is that wherever we can get those traits, whatever chokhmah we can use, and Chazal say chokhmah b'goyim tamin, Torah b'goyim al tamin, but chokhmah b'goyim tamin. That means if there are such traits, so then which you can pick up elsewhere, we should pick them up elsewhere. And so Rav Dessler was one of the great Baalei Machshava of the 20th century. There he has a specific mimer, a specific essay, which clearly is taken from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is actually a good book to read. So Dale Carnegie, I'm not sure he meant it lishma, but the book has good tactics for how to deal with other people in a nice way. So that's what Chazal are telling us. Yafeh Sichasan, Avdei Avos, Yotzim Mitaros and Shalbanim. We have to learn from the Tzfarim, from our Rabbeim, from our peers, right? And eventually, Mir Hashem, from your Talmidos, because mi Talmida Yotzim Mikulam, how to fix our midos, how to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu by elevating our character, especially in Be'am Chaveo, how to relate to other people. Okay, if there are no questions, I wish you a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
We saw the Christmas